Good evening, everyone. My name is Ihsan Hines. I'm from My Brother's Keeper Cares. Welcome to season number 2 of the Wellness Wednesday discussions. We have a great panel here tonight. We welcome you back with a heavy subject, but we want to turn it into a positive subject, hopefully something that we can leave with solutions or techniques to be able to move forward with some healing. We want to talk about growing through grief. We have some panelists today, and one of our featured moderators is going to actually share some perspectives as a panelist tonight, Eric Marsh from MBKCares. As many of you know, we've been doing the My Brother's Keeper Wellness Wednesday discussion since, I believe we started in April. We did 13 weeks of discussions during the pandemic just to try to talk about ways to heal from mental health scars or just deal with the new world we were living in and the world we're still currently living in, where this world's just been a world and a year full of trauma, from the death of Kobe Bryant to the civil unrest, the police brutality, and the pandemic that's still present on our globe. Not to mention some people in political power who hopefully won't be there very long. So we would like to discuss some things about grief tonight. I'm going to introduce Eric, and then we'll go along and have the other panelists introduce themselves and say a little bit about yourself before we get into this discussion. So my brother Eric from MBK Cares in the Fathering Circle, would you please introduce yourself as well?
Well, thank you for that, Ihsan. I appreciate that. I want to make a point to share with everybody that this is, as you had said, this is actually the first show of our second season of doing this. So we made a decision to, limit our series to 13 episodes, and so this is significant. So thank you, ladies, for being here. Thank you for everybody that's watching us. We didn't know how long this was going to last and how many people were actually going to tune in when we first started doing this, but it actually came out of the monthly MBK Care sessions that we were doing in person prior to COVID. And as Ihsan said, the mission of MBK Cares is really about mental health and wellness in a community, but specifically for African American men. We primarily focused on suicide prevention, bullying prevention, and violence prevention. And the conversations that we were having in person were so rich and involved much of the community that once we started going into quarantine, we needed to find some way to kind of reaching out. And so I'm proud to say that we have been doing these since literally the first week in April, I believe. MBK Cares has received quite a significant amount of notoriety for doing these, which it's not why we do it, but it's always good to know you'd be recognized and acknowledged for the work that you do. So again, we're here for sharing of information and for healing of our community, and which is why we have this outstanding group of panelists and guests on tonight. So as Ihsan said earlier, we're going to be dealing with the issue of grief and healing from grief and loss and all the different variations of it. So I want to go through and have our guests introduce themselves. And I will start with our returning guest, Tyrice McCoy. So Tyrice, tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tyrice McCoy. I'm a relationship therapist here in Philadelphia in private practice. So I've been doing this work since 2009, moving from engineering into this work because I feel like I'm operating more in my purpose than what I can do. And I've had experience in my practice working with many people who are healing and growing and living with grief and through grief. And I've also, in my own self, experienced the loss of my father and my grandmother, my grandma Lee, significant loved ones, and learned through the process of my own grief and loss. So I'm grateful to be here.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. All right, our next guest is Miss Nicole Bartlett. Nicole, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Yes, I want to thank you, Eric and Ihsan, for inviting me on this session. This is an honor. I am Nicole M. Bartlett. I am the funeral director and owner of Nicole M. Bartlett Funeral Home and Cremations Incorporated. Grief, to me, I know as a funeral director that I deal with it daily. I've also experienced it. And through the death of my 13-year-old brother who passed away, and that was 23 years ago, we're still as a family trying to cope with how to still manage and live without the loss of our younger brother. And although it's 23 years, I know that others also are dealing with grief. It doesn't matter how long. Grief for everyone is different, especially if it's a loss of a child, which is that's my mother's son. So it's real heavy on her. So as a funeral director, there are certain things that I have implemented into our funeral home as far as aftercare. So that's a baby of mine because I've experienced the loss, a great loss of ours. So that's basically who I am and what we do. We'll get further into that as we move forward.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nicole. All right, and our third guest is Maxayn Gooden. So Maxayn, tell us a little bit about yourself, the work you do, and what brings you to this conversation around grief and loss. You're on mute, Maxayn. Let's try that.
There we go.
There we go.
Good evening, everyone. I thank you guys so much for having me on as well. And my name is Maxayn Gooden, and I am the founder and director of Women of Valor 74, which is a mentoring program for young girls between the ages of 12 and 18, as well as a women's empowerment organization. And I am also the founder and director of Job World 18, which is a mentoring program for young men and also a scholarship. And I have personally dealt with grief and losing my 18-year-old son Thanksgiving break of 2017 when he went to visit his oldest sister in Harrisburg for Thanksgiving break. And he was a boys Latin student, 3.5 GPA, just got accepted into numerous colleges, and he was murdered. And so that is where my Job World 18 was birthed. And this is why I continue to do the work that I do outside of those organizations as well. But I will get more into it as we go along.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. And so the thing that I guess brings me to this conversation and makes this a little bit different for me as well is because like many people, not just in this city, but across this country and globally, who are dealing with the pandemic and the loss of a lot of things. You know, I just recently lost my only sister in March. And as a matter of fact, today is a significant day because it is Ancestral Remembrance Day. And this is a day that's celebrated by several individuals of African descent and many other cultures, but primarily African Americans in this country recognize today as Ancestral Remembrance Day. And my sister was significant in bringing it to Philadelphia and making it known and making it an annual event since 2013. And so I got a chance to go to the river this morning as part of African tradition and pour a libation and, you know, honor our ancestors and honor her. She was now with the ancestors. And so I wanted to have this conversation from a very personal standpoint, but also knowing that over the course of the last 6 months since we've been dealing with quarantine, that a lot of people have experienced a wide variety of loss and have been grieving in a variety of different ways and been dealing with that grief in a lot of different ways. So I want to touch on not just death, but all the other variations of loss that people have experienced and how it impacts us. But we're going to start off with Ihsan asking some questions, and we're just going to kind of go round robin and get a chance to have a dialogue about that. Okay?
Yeah, I appreciate everyone. Your introductions were phenomenal. Also want to identify our audience out there and thank you, whether you're watching this through Facebook, YouTube, through Zoom, whatever platform that you're watching this on. We appreciate you for your time. And I hope that everyone, while you're hearing things, that you take some time to check in with yourself. I understand as you're hearing things that may be memories of other people's grief, it may connect with some of your own pain. So if you need to step away from the camera, I suggest you do that, but also realize this is not just us reliving things for the sake of doing the funeral all over again. These are us trying to talk about things so that we can identify we have experiences, but we want to also identify solutions so that we can get through each day. So I thank you for being here, and also for you as my panel. If anything connects with your personal experience, you need to leave the screen for a little while, feel free to do that. Whatever you had to do to practice self-care and maintenance. Thank you all. I have a question. I actually want to start off with Ty. There was something that was on my mind yesterday while watching the news. It was the scene of the explosion in Beirut. And a friend of mine reached out to me, and he was talking about how it was like a mushroom explosion. I'm not sure if everyone has seen it, but it looked like an atom bomb blew up. And it reminded me of the Hiroshima explosion from about 75 years ago. So what that made me wonder is, when we have an experience that's traumatic and you have something that reminds you of it, as you're being a therapist, how does that connect in a certain way with grief? I'll unmute you. Can you hear us? Okay.
Oh yes, yes, so that's basically a trigger, right? So it's something that reminded you of what you've experienced in the past. Any grief that you've experienced, any hardship, any trauma, um, various things can become triggers, such as seeing an explosion, unfortunate explosion in Beirut, such as going through a storm, smelling a specific type of cologne or perfume, hearing a song. Triggers triggers range the gambit, because when we love somebody, we live with them, we do life with them, and anything can just bring up that memory. Or even like you said, Ihsan, your question about just seeing a trauma in and of itself, because what triggers in the mind is death. What triggers in the mind is sudden death, possibly like what just happened in Beirut, uh, and also seeing people's fear, seeing people's experiences, and us actually connecting with that. And you remember the last time you've connected with pain. You remember the last time you connected with loss. You remember the last time, and your mind is just taken right back there.
Yeah, that was a great way you put it, because this year has been loss on many levels. It hasn't just been the loss of life. There's been the loss of finances, with people losing their jobs. There's been families who have gone through domestic abuse or separation. I've seen some people who I follow on social media who have gone through divorce during this time. And loss can be, like you just identified, the loss of someone you love, not just to death, but the loss of a relationship, a friendship, a business partnership, anything. So I appreciate that. Nicole, I want to actually swing this same conversation your way. You mentioned that you've had some personal experience with loss. How do you then translate, how do you carry that, but then help people on a daily basis, being someone who's a funeral director dealing with their loss? How do you deal with that yourself? How are you able to practice self-care while helping people deal with some of the most traumatic experiences they've ever dealt with in their lives?
Well, I believe I was called to do that, to do God's work. That is a help in itself. He gives me the strength to do it. It's been 23 years, so it has helped. A little time has helped. And I just wanted to piggyback off of what Ms. Tyrice was saying, is that certain things will trigger our emotions. Like when Christmas come around, we know around Christmas that he was the one that got the biggest Christmas gifts. So certain things trigger. We know certain holidays, his birthday's coming around. So we start to plan ahead as to what we're going to do. So we're doing something for the community in his honor. So that helps a little bit. It also helps me when I help other families, because I know what they've gone through as far as losing a sibling. I have seen the pain from my mother experiencing loss of a son. So I understand how deep their pain is by looking at what she's been through. I don't know how they feel, but I have seen that struggle and that pain in their eyes, in her eyes. So I can relate a little bit of what they're going through. I don't know how they feel, but I know that it's a very sensitive issue because it's the loss of a child. So it helps me to be able to help others. And all the things that we do at the funeral home for the community and for our families, it is so rewarding to me. And that's what gives me the strength to continue to move forward.
Thank you. And I appreciate that ministry that you're doing. Is you're having compassion on people while they're facing extreme grief. And it seems like every one of us on here is talking about a way that we transformed a tragedy into something that's a calling in life. And Maxayn, you actually were talking about creating a mentorship program when you're dealing with young people, or you talked about dealing with young women, but also dealing with men in another mentoring component. Is that true? Let me unmute you. I'm sorry. Max, you're gone. Can you hear us?
There you go. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so just wanted to understand for you, is there any type of feeling of purpose in that and healing that you get with helping other people to deal with things or trying to steer people down pathways that could be dangerous in their own lives to help them avoid it?
So prior to my son's death, I had already started a mentoring program for young women. So I decided to start the Jar World Mentoring just because my son was a mentor himself. So what better way to remember him and to continue his legacy in doing that? But also I did it because and I always go back to this, is that if I can help a young man not be that person that killed my child, then that's what I'm going to do. And so that gives me an outlet to be able to bring positive male role models into their lives to show them there is other things out there for them versus, what's happening around them, so that mentoring program, it helps a lot in having young men also be able to share their emotions, because as we know, our men are taught not to show emotion, not to cry, but to be hard, right? So in that mentoring program, I allow them to be who they are, whatever emotion that they feel. This is your forum, it's closed in, it's just us. I allow them to feel it because that's very important. So they are learning compassion and how to be sensitive, but still know you're still men, you're still young men. It doesn't take away from who you are.
Thank you. You're teaching young men something that a brother we had, actually not on this discussion, but we've done different panels with and work. His name is Salah Muhammad. When I first got a chance to connect with brother Salah, he has a podcast called Salah's Corner as well. And Salah was talking about toxic masculinity, and he'd written a really nice article about it. So I actually want to shift this part of the conversation towards Eric. Well, we're talking about masculinity. Maxayn just talked about how men have to learn to be able to express themselves and their emotions. You do a lot of work within mentorship when it comes to bullying, anti-bullying, when it comes to fathering and mentorship, and just being a advocate of community. So how have you turned your own trauma into motivation to do other things, to be able to do other things as a man, to be able to help your children, your community, everyone? How have you done that? I know what you've done, but how have you been able to do it?
Well, first let me say that we all have to start with the understanding that there is no difference in how you do it between a man and a woman, right? As human beings, we have the same range of emotions. As human beings, we express the same range of emotions. It's only through our socialization that we're taught either that we can express it, we can overly express it, or we can hold it in and implode. But the reality is that we all have that same finite number of expressions and range of emotions. And so it's not that how I've had to learn it as a man. I've had to learn to be a human being first and foremost, right? And to undo a lot of the socialization that is done to men that tells us that we can't express ourselves or how we express ourselves, right? Because typically, I often mention how, anger and hurt is often a secondary emotion. Men are taught oftentimes, or we see men respond to things aggressively or violently. But the reality is that, and I think Ty can speak to this better than I can, but the reality is that that's often a secondary emotion. There's something underneath all of that. But because we aren't allowed to cry, we aren't allowed to fall apart, we aren't allowed to do those things, it builds up in us and it comes out in other unhealthy ways and destructive ways. So for me, the way I've dealt with it, or way I've been able to do what I've done, is to feel first and foremost, like just feel, and know that it's okay to feel. And then to go beyond that is really how we choose to explain either the incident that has occurred or the life that's been affected. So in my case, I talk about my sister a lot this year because it's been a trauma. But I just got off the phone talking to an elder in our community who knew her and who was actually one of her teachers. And we talk about building a legacy based on the work that she had already started. And so I could fall apart. I could just sit here and mope and cry and then just go on about my business. But the reality is we feel loss and grief because we lost something significant. And so if it's significant, what can we do to maintain it? What can we do to honor it? What can we do to carry it forward? So I just recognize it as, picking up the mantle, picking up the work of what our loved ones or someone else has been doing and carrying it forward. But it all starts with the ability to feel what you're feeling and accept it and sit in it when you have to, and then move on from there. And I do want to add one other thing. I want to add one other thing before we go, because I just recognize something, and looking at everyone that's here and looking at the women that's here, that you ladies here and all of us actually represent a full range of the process of community when it comes to grieving, right? And so when I talk about, and I don't want to take up too much more time, but I really need to mention this because when my sister passed away, I had a horrible experience at the funeral parlor. I had a horrible experience with the funeral director that I was dealing with. And I watched Nicole, and I know her spirit, and I've seen her talk to clients. I've seen how she presents what she presents and how she handles that. And I want to say thank you to Nicole for just the professionalism and the sense of empathy and care that she handles that. But then there's also another step, what do? We move on to people who might be licensed therapists and practitioners like Tyrice. And so having someone that you can turn to is vital for us to be able to put our lives back together. So I appreciate that. And then the next level, I think, is community. So talking to Maxayn, when she talks about the mentoring program that she does on a community-wide level, it's not a business. It's not a profession. This is just community and family that's being built here. So I just wanted to point out, this is just really a beautiful spectrum of what the healing process could look like, and I think should look like for everyone. So thank you all.
You know what, Eric, when you were talking, you mentioned the word significance. And even as you just now talked about the concert that's going on with our healing right now, right? As far as therapy, mentorship, and then also just the logistics of handling a funeral. And it connected with me, one, because the word significance and how you were talking about how you had to process certain things. There was a therapist I used to see after my brother died, and his name is Dr. Randolph Walters. And one of the things that he always stressed was that we're made for significance. So when he was helping me to deal with my personal loss of my brother, but also I was dealing with the personal loss of a broken relationship, and he started helping me to understand that I'm made for significance. And he talked about understanding made for significance means that you have to realize there's some experiences that you had. And he said these three things. He said you cannot conquer what you don't confront, you can't confront what you don't acknowledge, and you can't acknowledge what you don't see. And that was a while ago. My brother died 13 years ago, but those words stuck with me, and it'll always stick with me. Actually, this is August. My brother died August of 2007. So this is that was a necessary moment of acknowledgement just now. But I wanted to also add that concert that you talked about, it also includes faith on a level where God comes into play. And I also want to identify a transparent moment between you and I. The loss causes frustration sometimes. So you and I were talking about, we had a phone call maybe about a little over a week ago while we were transitioning back into thoughts of having season 2 discussions. And I told you how I was frustrated with certain things about racial inequality and how it seemed like things were constantly being forced on us through the media that were affecting my emotions and causing me to feel some hatred that I don't normally carry. And you actually got back to me with messages about God and not putting those things on God. So I actually want to invite faith into this conversation too, because as we process things, it's easy to think that God forgot or God overlooked something. But to understand that all things happen to everyone, it rains on every one of us. you help me remember that even as somebody who's an advocate for it, sometimes we have to be reminded of it. So I thank you for talking about the concert, but I want to make sure I don't leave out that faith plays a part, because faith plays a part when it's too heavy for us to carry. If Nicole is conducting a funeral and her own grief kicks in, she may have God comfort her and remind her at a moment, or Ty is talking to someone and something connects with her own experience, or just as us being fathers or wounded men. When the pandemic started, your sister passed away around the same time that we were transitioning into this whole year. You didn't have a chance to catch your breath, but I really admire how you allowed this to be motivation to create your own journey, but also to keep the memory of your sister alive and to make sure that something is done in her memory that will be impactful for other people. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to actually go to the next question for
Can I, before you
yeah.
go to the next question, I have a question that's kind of related to what you just brought up, right?
Okay.
So I want to know, and jump in if this is the question that you were going to ask, but I want to know from each of our guests, how has faith played a role? Like, be specific in sharing that, because, and I want to pose the question maybe more to Tyrice instead of everyone, but everybody can answer. How has faith played a role in your ability to navigate grief and loss? And what about those people who maybe don't subscribe to a specific faith or religion? What can we offer them, or what can we talk to them about? And this is for anybody that wants to jump in.
So I live my life dedicated to the Lord. I can't do anything I do without God. I live my life dedicated to God. So the Lord helps me to know which way to go in my business, which way to go in my sessions, the decisions that I make, because I don't know what's happening next. So my relationship with Christ has helped me cope with the very utterly disappointing and devastating loss of my father, because I hoped for his life to turn around for most of my life. And as soon as there was the opportunity for that to happen, he passed away. That's how I saw it. And also, that was pre-therapist. So I was working in construction management. I was an engineer then, and I didn't have all of the skills that I have now. And my first time doing the work of therapy was working with a population of people that reminded me of my father every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw, for a while I was chilling. I was able to move forward with the heart of a full and utter love. But when I started to see his face, every corner and everywhere I turned, I knew I needed to go do my own work in therapy, but I also knew I needed to get in with God. I needed to deal with the disappointment and the loss of hope. Living a life hoping that my father would be the man that he was created to be, and finally feeling like it was going to happen, and then feeling like that was snatched away. And I continue, even to this day, I was asking God specifically about something about my father, and I had revelation of that. So for me, it's seeking the Lord's face, literally crying out to him. I'm not trying to hide none of these feelings from God. You see me anyway. You see my heart. You see my frustration. You see my anger. You see how it's hard for me to hope. You see how I might love that person a little bit harder or stronger than I probably should, in ways that are less healthy because of what I experienced. So I lay it all before the Lord. And when pain kind of comes up in a way that I need to deal with, I'm not pushing it away. I'm looking at it and I'm pushing it. I'm laying it before him. So for people who don't have their faith, their belief to utilize in their healing process, I talk to them about community. So in the world of like addictions work, there's discussion of spirituality. And for those who don't believe in God or a higher power, they go beyond, they go to the place of believing in something greater than themselves. That can be community, that can be a relationship with other people, that can be the work that you do, the philanthropy that you do, global outreach, local outreach, building up others, writing books, whatever the case is, but looking at something that is larger than yourself, some groups that are larger than yourself, not to redirect your focus, but understand that you are not alone. And it's hard because many people struggle and they may be solitary. They may not have the resources of family. They may not have the resources of a really good support system. So I encourage them to join groups, not just coming in and talking to me every week, because that can be good, but then it can't be all. I cannot supplement what community can do. So those are some of the ways I definitely help them to find resources that are bigger than themselves. Volunteer, start that passion project, operate in a space that can help to commemorate and to honor the legacy of your loved one.
Yeah, you know, Ty, I want to jump in and feel free, Maxayn and Nicole, to add to this, because you mentioned group therapy. And I think you ladies both know, like from my understanding, you've done group sessions around grief and understanding that connection. And the other piece that you touched on, Ty, was this idea of isolation. We exist in a society that promotes isolation. Even though they don't use that word, it's individuality, right? But it still comes off for those who can't navigate that and that unnatural process. We wind up isolating ourselves, our heads down in our phones and tablets without even recognizing that we have or could be building community around us. So either one, Maxayn or Nicole, did you guys want to add to that conversation around faith, and how does your faith play into that?
So I'll just interject for a second. When it comes to faith, I'm so glad you brought that up, because in school, I was very shocked when I was in school to be a funeral director. They mentioned faith. And it shocked me because, you know, a lot of people, that's a little touchy for a lot of individuals. And one of our conversations in school was, how do you help people that are grieving? Where can you direct them to? And the first thing came up was whatever they believe in, whatever higher power, whether it's Buddhist, whether it's Protestant, you know, whether it's Baptist, whatever their faith is, or whatever higher power, have them to seek that first. And that was important to me, because I'm in love with the Lord, and I know without him I am nothing. Apart from him, I do not know where I'm going, Ty. I solely agree with you. And when I connected to him, when my little brother passed, I connected to him and I said, Lord, if you exist, if you are real, I need you right now. I need you to show me. And believe it or not, he has showed me. He revealed things to me that no man can ever do. And that's how I knew that he existed. So I always, with every family that I meet, although, you know, you have to be very touchy, because you do not know what type of faith they believe in. You don't know. So I always put in there, you know, without him, I am nothing. And I always point up to the sky. So whatever they believe in, they know to try to seek that. But faith is very important. And the other thing, Eric, I wanted to say, I commend you, because when your sister passed, the strength that you have is utterly amazing. You kept going. And one thing that I like what you did today was that you still found enough courage and strength to go out there and celebrate everything that she believed in and she stood for. You were there today. Regardless if nobody else stood there, you stood there today. That took a lot from you, because you are a very busy person, and I know you are. I know. So for you to take time out to do that was strength. Besides anything else, we're human first. Everybody must realize that we are human. We're going to have emotions, but you stood up and you did that for her. And then you talk about her. That's a healing. when you speak of them and you say their name and you put their pictures out, you hang their pictures up and you talk about them, you tell their story, that is a healing. You're moving towards the healing process.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry for
I'm gonna
taking
tell you, it's been a long time since I got up 5 o'clock in the morning for anybody, but I was up this morning for her. So that says
I wanted
something.
to touch on
Go ahead.
that faith piece as well. So when my son was murdered, I had just started fully walking, you know, with God side by side, and he had freed me up from so many childhood trauma that I had went through. And I was walking in my calling of helping young girls with theirs because I went through it, right? So I was doing everything right. And so when my son was murdered at 18, in the prime of his life, going to college, playing football, everything that we worked for in them 4 years, the first thing I was mad at God, because I'm like, God, I don't understand it. I'm like, listen, I'm doing everything you told me to do, and you take my son? I was angry. And I was like, I don't understand.
Oh, I think her camera froze. Can you guys hear her?
I can't
And
hear.
I already knew my calling is to help people. I already knew that from, again, trauma that I've been through prior to my son passing. So I already knew what I was supposed to be doing. And what I realized is that when you are truly walking in your calling, sometimes you are hit with something so hard because you're going to be tested on your faith. You're going to be tested on when you say, God, use me. You're going to be tested on, what your calling really is, to see if something devastating like that, are you still going to walk it? Are you still going to believe in me? Are you still going to have the faith? And I always tell people, be very cautious when you say, God, use me, because you don't know what you're going to have to go through. But it also highlights who he is, because so many people watch me still praise dance. My worship became even stronger because I was no enemy. You thought she was going to stop me, and it became even more stronger. And so many people have just watching my life have grown strong when they have suffered a loss. And that alone is what God wants us to do. He wants us to be a walking, living testimony and show who he is through our life, no matter what we go through. So having that faith and having a belief in God is very, very, very important. Very important.
So Maxayn, I want to ask you another question before we go back to Ihsan. That is, you mentioned being angry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, in your experience or what you've gone through, what does it look like to cope with loss in an unhealthy way? How do you know if you're actually dealing with this correctly? What are some ways that you've managed and dealt with grief and loss in a healthy way? But what are some ways first that you dealt with it in an unhealthy way? And how did you know it was unhealthy? And when did you realize?
And I'm glad you said that, because there was an unhealthy way, even though I was still holding on to my faith and everything. And I shared this actually when me and Nicole had one of our grief sessions. And I said that I started to drink alcohol to help me sleep because I couldn't sleep. You know, a lot of people, you can't sleep. I couldn't sleep. So I started to drink alcohol to help me sleep. But as time kept going, I realized, okay, one glass wasn't enough. That one turned into two, that two turned into three. And I had to once I started taking a step back, I'm like, I'm drinking 3 and 4 glasses, and guess what? I'm still not sleepy. So that's when I realized that was a bad behavior. That was like, you're drinking all of these drinks and you're still not sleeping. So that's when I realized that I had to stop that wasn't helping me. And I had to really just deal with my son being gone. I had to really, and so like I said, that alcohol helping me sleep was just, I knew that wasn't a healthy way, and it wasn't even helping me sleep after a while. So yeah.
So give me what was a healthy coping mechanism or a way that you managed that? And then I want to go to Tyrice, and Ty, you can answer that as well.
So, well, let me mention this. I don't know, well, no, I'm going to say it now, but I work for a program that's ran through the district attorney's office. It's called the CARES program. And I am what they call a peer crisis responder. So when a homicide happens in Philadelphia, I will get cases and I have to call that family to give them emotional support, also to tell them about the different services that are offered here for them. And I always, when I talk to the families, and most times, again, they give me people that have lost children to homicide because I can be relatable and help them cope with it because I've been through it. And I always tell them about journal writing. That's a big thing, like just writing and just acknowledging that that person's no longer here is a big step. Because I think somebody mentioned that a lot of times we don't want to look at pictures, we don't want to say their name, but when you do that, that's part of the acknowledgement of realizing that they're no longer here. And that is definitely the first step in healing, in the healing process. Journal writing, talking to them, even though they're not here, I always suggest that. And I always suggest, like, everyone deals with grief in their own way. But I always say, like, for me, I don't celebrate my son's death date. I don't go into this, I said, I don't go into this emotional thing because this is the day of his death, because I got to deal with it every day. So what makes that one day that he was murdered the worst day ever? Because every day for me is a bad day because he's not here, right? So I don't even acknowledge that day. But the day that he was born, I acknowledge that. And I have a big bowling party in celebration of him. And me and all his friends and family, we all get together and we talk about him, we laugh, and we enjoy each other's company to celebrate his birth, not his death. And so I always suggest, celebrate them. Society does dictate you have to be sad on that specific day because you're going to be sad every day of your life because they're not here. So just tell people those suggestions, and again, journal writing is good.
Thank you. Ty, what are some ways that you've seen people deal with grief and loss in an unhealthy way, and what are some alternatives that you recommend?
So sometimes oftentimes actually, I see people go into what's called complicated grief. And with complicated grief, the person is literally kind of putting other narratives onto what happened, blaming themselves, blaming, especially when you blame them, they're blaming themselves, changing the narrative of who they are in light of this grief. And so they're just adding extra things onto the grief. Also, when the grief has sparked or triggered any kind of, I was about to say maladaptive. So any kind of mindsets that they had about themselves, and about the way that they handle life, that just doesn't fit with their moving forward with health and healing, traumas, and other pains. So that complicated grief, it looks like basically they're not able to heal the wound, and the wound becomes infected, and it starts to fester, and then other people can smell it, right? So I've seen that happen where the person may choose to, so my end, I fully and utterly did not talk to anybody about the fact that my father died. None of my friends knew about it. I drove, I had to sign his DNR, which was the worst part of the whole thing. And so I drove without telling it. I think I told my boss because I had to. I left work, drove, signed the DNR, came back, went straight to work, did not think about it, did not deal with it, and I avoided dealing with that grief now and that loss. Now, that's not necessarily as unhealthy as if I had completely denied the fact that my father had died. But I chose in that moment because my mind was, I got to keep on going. I'm the only one that's leading this project. And if I allow this to break me down like it can, this project's going to, kind of crumble, just a little bit of a magnified view of self, but thinking that basically I can't spend the time that I need to grieve the loss of someone that was necessary for my existence. And so, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. So, that for me.
I want to touch on, you use the term the magnified sense of self. Explain what that is a little bit. Like elaborate on that a little bit.
Many people who inherently have leadership in them, which is everybody, right, has this very strong sense of responsibility to insert thing here: job, purpose, business, organization, family. And sometimes we can move from operating in excellence and appropriate responsibility to then moving into almost type of Messiah complex, to thinking that if I am not here, all of this will fall.
Mhm.
And
I think
so,
that's, no. The reason why I keyed in on that is because it goes back to what Ihsan was talking about with the work that I do with fathers and mentoring, right? I see that in men. It's something about, and I'm not saying women though, because you just admitted to a sense of that as well. But I just wanted to highlight that because I think the men that are watching and that the people that are watching that are able to identify it now, it's almost like a spotlight. Like you can now, there's a name for it, there's a label for it. And that's one of the things that I wanted to kind of get into, is being able to give people that spotlight, to be able to recognize, oh, this is what's happening. This is why that person is doing that. I understand now. And so thank you.
Can I actually
can I
interject
say
on that?
something?
Yes. Go ahead, Ty.
This is kind of off topic, but it goes along with the topic. So earlier, Ihsan, you said something that twinged my ears, and you said, "Hey, look, we're going to be talking about some hard topics. Basically, if you need to excuse yourself because you're going through, you can excuse yourself." And what I wrote down was, why do we need to excuse ourselves when we are displaying our pain? Can we bear witness to one another's pain? If I'm breaking down, or if I'm talking and I'm about to start, I'm not going to turn my camera off, because I'm going to show this pain. And the more that we get used to knowing that I can be strong, carry out my responsibilities, and feel, and maybe even seem like I'm breaking down at the moment, I'm just emoting, and I need to, like you said earlier, Eric. And so, for the reason that twinged my ears up is because a lot of times we have developed this mindset that strength and health looks like the absence of perceived negative emotions and a negative emoting. But we have been created with the gambit of emotions, and it's so necessary that we're able to have space to express it, because when we don't allow ourselves to cry, we have excess cortisol in our system. God made us so amazing that we release cortisol in our tears. What? You know? And when we can just show, sorry, I'm about to stop. I'm gonna put myself on mute because we need to see.
No, go to church. We going to church now. Like we really going to church. And I think it's important, like, to have this level of passion, right? Because the world is upside down right now. There are so many people going through what we're going through. And honestly, I thought about it as we're sitting here. We haven't even touched on one of the most, we're almost an hour into our conversation, and we haven't even touched on the range of loss that people can and have been experiencing. We've talked about losing loved ones. Every single one of us on this call has talked about the loss of a loved one. But what about the loss of a long-time career because of COVID? What about the loss of your home? What about the loss of personal, what Ihsan mentioned earlier? What about the loss of love relationships? And what do those things look like? And how do we deal with those things as well? I'm thinking about the fact that so Ihsan and I, as I mentioned to you, MBKCares focuses a lot on the violence prevention and talking about violence prevention. And we're going to have a whole conversation just on gun violence and the loss that comes as a result of that. So I wanted to kind of transit, and I know, Ihsan, you had a question, so I don't want to interrupt, but I just want to get people thinking about it.
Yeah, I have a thought I wanted to share before I get into a question. Actually, I want to address what Ty just said also, and not in a combative way. The reason why I mentioned like excusing wasn't so that we don't confront things that are going on, but if anything is too overwhelming, make sure that we do practice self-care And the reason why I say that actually connects to the other thing you were talking about the magnified self. If we only help, we can actually not remember to help ourselves. Like, and I realized, like, I, for a long time, had gotten caught up in the work of just being busy in ministry, being busy, like being a father, a worker, whatever, and had forgot to practice working on me. And then when things fall apart, all my hope and everything was in those things. And the reason why that's important that I bring it up is the night that my brother died, I was actually on my way to a church event to go minister to young people about God. And I didn't recognize that my own brother was struggling with things. So self-care for me, when I bring it up, is so that we're taking care of ourselves and also recognizing our family and the people that we need to communicate with well. So I just wanted to say that, but that was the afterthought of what I was trying to bring up. Actually had to do with how do we acknowledge, like, there's not only the grief that we've been caused. I was driving around last night thinking about this episode, right? Thinking about this discussion. And I found myself, I saw somebody and I wanted to introduce myself. And I thought, like, okay, I'm gonna introduce myself as the founder of this organization, this mentor for the community, whatever. And then I checked myself, and this makes me think about what you were talking about, Ty. When I have to present myself as my title or my responsibility, I'm missing something, because I'm now looking for acceptance instead of just being able to present myself as every piece of me, broken or whatever. I'm just this person, I'm just Ihsan, and presenting myself that way. And the reason why that was important to recognize is because not only do I experience grief, but I'm also the perpetrator of other people's grief. And I've had to recognize that, like, this healing process and this need for God is not just so that he can comfort us when we're dealing with grief, but so that he can help us to forgive ourselves and others when we've been done wrong or when we've been the person who's done other people wrong. I have people right now who are hurt because my time has taken us in different directions for friendships, relationships, everything. And there's just constant change that happens. And sometimes when we're on the other end of that change happening and it scars us, it can cause us to need God to help us with forgiveness of other people who have hurt us, but then also help us to forgive ourselves when we can't actually repair things. And the reason why that has been very important is the death of my brother doesn't just feel like a loss of his life. It's a loss of time that I didn't get. And the thoughts of what could I have done that could have made our relationship better when we were young? Or what could I have done that could have made the day that he left different? Or what could I have done I lost a friend to cancer. I've lost broken relationships. I've lost money. What could I have done differently? And God helps you forgive and realize, like, all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And when you start thinking that way, what I realized while thinking these dark things the last few days about loss and pain, for the first time probably in my life, counting it all joy was happening in process. I've been able to look back and, like, oh, I can count that all joy looking like 10 years later as it was some evidence. So, that worked out for my good, but I was able to see it going on. Like, this person just pissed me off, but you know what? I'm gonna count it all joy now. And I was able to see that as a way that God had been maturing me and teaching me some things. And the last thing I want to say, I know these thoughts are all over the place, but trust me, they're coming from a correct place. This shirt I have on right now, it says hope for hope. And this is about a woman named Hope Wells, a young lady. She was 23 years old. And Hope actually passed away 2 weeks ago from a form of leukemia or cancer. And the reason why that hits me hard is because her father, Michael Wells, he was my mentor growing up. He was my youth minister at Beulah Baptist Church, and he was over a program called Teen Rap. This guy used to help me before his daughter ever even existed, and I found myself trying to wrap myself around the thought of, God, a person who has dedicated their life to you has experienced the loss of one of his baby girls. And I try to wrap myself around that thought. And it's made me think about something that I can't remember if it was Nicole that said this or if it was Ty. But you were talking about how somebody else's pain is not your own. Like, I've lost somebody, but this person lost that individual. And even within that family, somebody lost a sister, somebody lost a younger sister, somebody lost a daughter, somebody lost, you know what I mean? It's the same individual is gone, but a different relationship is lost. And I find myself now trying to have compassion on understanding other people's losses, whether I've contributed to it or whether I just don't know what to say to it, but just praying for people. So I want to actually solicit prayers for the Wells family. Michael Wells is the father, Patricia Wells is the mother, Charity, Joy, Glory, and I'm forgetting someone, Faith. And their sister Hope is in our memories and our thoughts. I'm going to put in the comments a way that people can support their family at this time right now. But loss is different. It's not just the loss that we've experienced, but the loss sometimes that we contributed to. And I thought it was important to bring that up as well.
So thank you for that. I wanna before we get too far along in our, because it's obvious, one, that we need to just have church up in here, right? Like this is where the conversation is going. This is what we need to do. But because Ihsan talked about sharing this information about this family and other things, I want to make sure that each of you has an opportunity to share resources for the people that are watching, for the people that are in the comments section, and for individuals that are dealing with the variety of loss that some people can identify what we've talked about so far. Some people may not, but that doesn't mean that they're not experiencing loss or have experienced loss in some kind of way. And at some point in time, they will experience a loss, or they will identify with what's being shared. So just starting at the top, I want to start with Maxayn. And no, actually, I want to start with Nicole, because Nicole has been waiting for a while. Nicole, do you have any resources and information that you want to share with the people that are watching, but either about the services you provide or about other services that people can use when dealing with loss and grief?
Yes, I want to start off by first saying that when COVID-19 first hit, I had a lot of families calling in stating that they had used other funeral homes, and we all do a great job. All of my colleagues, the job that we do is phenomenal for all of us. A lot of families did not receive funeral services, meaning the traditional way of burial or farewell or sending off our loved ones. They were denied that. So we have not even touched on, there's going to be a very, in the future and currently now, where a lot of families are dealing with trauma because they have not said goodbye to their loved ones. A lot of them have not even seen them prior to cremation. They just directly cremated them. So we haven't even touched on grief and the problems. They have not even started the grieving process, because our traditional way is to first have a funeral service. The interment is different, whether it's cremation or burial, but you have to be able to see your loved one prior to their interment. It helps you towards your grieving process, and a lot of us have not. The other thing is that here at Nicole and Bartlett Funeral Home and Cremations Incorporated, Maxayn and I, we do a live grief support group session on the second Wednesday of each month, giving our families and friends the opportunity to join us. And it's an encouraging session. It's not a session where you're going to be down and out. You know, we give you encouragement to let you know that there is life after this, that you can look and see that the rainbow is going to shine again, and that there's hope, and that you're going to get through it, and you're not alone. And we try to give you tools to help you move forward. So we welcome anyone to join our live grief session, which is on Nicole and Bartlett Facebook page. Maxayn and I were the hosts, and we love what we do. We've experienced loss, so we're not just talking. We also have guests that come on the show. We also, at Nicole and Bartlett Funeral Home, we offer funeral services, whether it's indoors or outdoors. If you have a big family, we now do outdoor services where we comply with the CDC guidelines. You're able to view your loved ones, see all of your family and friends. You can drive up, sanitize your hands, and enjoy each other's company as we social distance. We also have other services. If you visit our Facebook page, you can see all the events that Maxayn and I do. We love what we do. We love the community. We love loving on you, and we welcome everyone to join. I hope this helped.
Nicole, do you have a website for your business?
Yes. So it's
What is it?
nmbartlettfuneralhome.com.
Okay. Maxayn, do you have some information that you'd like to share, some resources or some upcoming resources that you can share with folks?
Yes. So I know we're sharing resources for all types of grief. So I do want to share this. I think this is really important. So for a lot of people that have lost their jobs and are unable to pay their rent, the rental assistance program has been extended just in case anyone needs that help. And the site is phlrentassist.org. They started taking applications July 6th. They're going to take them until September 1st, or either until the money runs out. So if you need assistance, please go on and apply as soon as possible. Also, I would like to talk about while we're all home and, again, some of us are not working, this is the time to find out what your vision is, find out what do you want to do, because you can utilize this time to not just feel like you're being isolated, but a lot of times when we're busy and we're working and we're doing this and we're doing that, now we have the time to focus on us. Time has slowed down. Now is the time that you can focus on visions that you may have put to the side because you were too busy. So my Woman of Valor 74, I do life coaching, but I also do vision consulting. And the vision consulting is, if you have a vision, you don't know where to start, I can help you start that vision. And sometimes it's just as getting your thoughts together and writing things down. But again, you can reach me at Woman of Valor 74 at gmail.com. I can tell you about the Job World's mentoring program. I can tell you about the Woman of Valor mentoring program. So
Eric, Max,
I'm sorry. Yes.
you were gone for like 30 seconds. Can you go back a little bit? You were talking about mentoring
Okay.
program.
If you want mentoring for your young man, you can still contact me through Women of Valor 74 at gmail.com, or you can just contact me there for the consulting, the life coaching, and the mentoring program. And I was going into the Amir Healing Center, which is if you need help with, you want group grief counseling, they provide that, but they also provide yoga. They also provide art classes, because when you're grieving, you do need different outlets that will help you express that emotion. And Amir is EMIR, and it's Healing Center. So that's another resource for someone, again, that is in a grief process.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Tyrice, tell us some resources and how people can reach you, and what are some resources they can use to help navigate grief process.
So if you want to speak to me, you can reach me at generateabundance.com. That's my website. You can find me on Psychology Today, Tyrice McCoy, and as you see here on Instagram at generate_abundance. If you'd like to send me an email, it's at tyricemccoy@gmail.com. I look forward to speaking with you. In terms of resources, one that I love is Black Men Heal. And yes, it's for Black men, and it's free therapy for Black men, 8 sessions they receive. I think that's a phenomenal organization. So that's the resource that I wanted to share. I think about therapy, all the time because it's what I do. But that's definitely one.
Excellent, thank you. And actually what we've done is we put all of the different organizations and contact information in the chat of the video right now, so people can access it, whether they're watching it live or when they come back later on and actually get the chance to view it. Ihsan, did you have any other questions before we start to wrap up?
I want to talk about some things that work for me, because I think that I talk about like point A or point B, but not really talk about how I got from point A or B. There's levels of grief, and some things bring things back up. When this year started off, Kobe Bryant died, and I remember feeling like I personally knew him. We talked about this on other episodes in the past, but I want people to acknowledge that if you feel the loss of somebody you didn't know, it doesn't mean that that loss didn't matter, like it wasn't real. Sometimes it connects to other loss, whether that's loss of a parent, whether that's loss of a friend, loss of time. If you got an F on a test at school, you feel you've lost something. You've experienced some type of disappointment. So I want people to first of all acknowledge that we all do fail. We all fail each other. We fail people sometimes, and we all, as long as we're still breathing, we have another opportunity. What helped me is God at the top, but He used so many other things. He used people who cared about me. He used people who hurt me. He used times when I hurt other people and forgave me, and then showed me, wow, forgiveness is good. And it's so many different levels to things. But also journaling helped me tremendously. Going for walks. I encourage people to get out and get some vitamin D in your life, particularly if you work an overnight job. Like I work an overnight job. I was working and missing out on sunlight and didn't realize how that was impacting my mental health. So I encourage people to get out, get some sunlight in your life. Journaling can really impact your prayer life, because as you learn how to be honest with yourself when nobody's watching, you can learn how to be honest with God and prayer in a different way, even if that includes yelling, cursing, whatever. Don't disrespect God in your heart, but I'm saying He can handle you coming to Him any way you are. And the other thing is even medication. I had to actually try an antidepressant medication, and that helped me get from a certain point so I could be sustained on just other things. So I'm not opposed to it. I don't swear by it, but I also don't think that it doesn't work. I've seen it work in my personal life. And try to stay away from the things that Ty mentioned earlier about like bad ways that we grieve. I forgot the exact term you used, but I remember the very day Kobe Bryant died, I was sitting at a poker table at the casino, and I wound up losing a significant amount of money. And I realized, like, when you're grieving, you're prone to make bad decisions or make worse circumstances even more severe than they need to be. If you're grieving, try to stay away from a guy or a girl if it's just going to lead to something sexually stimulating, because you can wind up causing circumstances way beyond, just way out of control. If you have
Yeah,
a
just bad
child,
decisions in general.
yeah,
Bad decisions in general.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can just go down other paths you didn't intend that have residual effects. If you have a child, you can wind up experiencing some other types of relationship trauma from broken relationships, or there's diseases out there. There's just heartache you can cause somebody else from just not being controlling of your body, but then also being respectful of your resources when it comes to your money right now, respecting your body when it comes to putting alcohol and drugs in here. Like, just be mindful right now. This is all we have, is our body and our time. And those are the things that we have to be responsible for. And as helpers, make sure that you are practicing self-care. I will never forget last September when, on September 10th, a pastor from California and also the director of the University of Penn Counseling Department, they both took their lives on the same day. And they were helpers. They were people who helped people. So I want to make sure that we realize that we have to pay certain attention to ourselves. So
Ihsan, can I make sure, and because of the nature of our conversation,
yes,
can we just ask the guests, like, what is your one way, what is your one source or primary source of self-care? What is something that you do to help manage the weight that you carry? Because all of you are carrying not only your personal loss and grief, but you're carrying other people's weight, whether you consider that energy, whether you consider it spirit, whatever you call, like, you are listening to people's grief and you're handling that. What is something that each of you do to practice self-care? And I want to start with Maxayn and then go from there.
I wanted to touch really quick on something Ihsan said. Like, I want to definitely say this: when you are grieving, be very careful of continuously watching the news, reading the newspaper, because all of these things that are happening with people dying, it adds on to what you're already feeling, and it's going to make you feel heavier. So I always suggest just to turn the news off. It's okay, because you don't want it to weigh even more heavier on the grief that you're feeling, along with the isolation that we're all in now. But to go back to answer your question, for me, I just started acknowledging when I need to take a break. I felt like I had to go. Like, okay, people need this, I can do that. Like anything that I can help with, because I could do it, I would do it, on top of everything else that I already have going on with my own organizations. And what I had come to realize is that I was starting to like get sick out of nowhere, and then I'll be okay, and then I'm sick again. And I just had to start realizing the signs that my body was giving me to say, Max, it's okay to take a break away from everything. So I learned to, I'm not on social media for a week. I'm not taking no phone calls for a week. Whatever it is that I need to do, I'm going to do it. And it's okay, because as a helper, you cannot help anyone else if you haven't helped yourself. You have to live what you want other people to live. So if I tell other people to take a break, I got to take a break for myself. And
Okay, but what do you do? What do you do during
what do I
that
do?
break? Yes.
Read, go get a massage, take
Okay.
walks,
Okay.
just self-care.
So you have a whole toolbox of
Oh, I got
things
a
to
whole
use.
toolbox. I have so many more tools. Yeah.
Exactly. Excellent. Nicole, what are some things that you do to help manage and to like really relieve yourself? What is self-care to you?
So to me, I go in my room. My husband get the kids. I go into my gospel. He'll tell you, when I'm upstairs, do not bother me. I've closed my door. The lights are out. I'll put my gospel music on, and there's a corner that I look at, and I know God is there because he has given me signs before. For those who are connected to the spirit, understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
So I do that. I also get manicures, pedicures, and I go to Dutch country.
Okay.
I would add that.
Because Dutch country, we have a special spot. I'm not telling nobody because I don't want to see nobody's face there when I go.
Oh.
There's a hotel that my husband and I go to, and it's phenomenal.
Okay.
When you see God's creation. When you open up the windows, you see the sunset, you see the sunrise.
Okay. Well, bring me back some milk or some ice cream or lemonade or something. Next time, I don't want to know where you go. Just bring me back something.
Okay. All right.
All right. Tyrice, what does your self-care toolbox consist of?
So I go to the beach. I will get up as early as I need to get up and go to the beach. It can be cold, it can be hot. I could just be there for an hour. Take me an hour and a half to get there, hour and a half to get back home. I'm good with that good hour. And I also like to drive. Spending time with ones, and letting the people know who love me, that I love, know that I need a moment. And I mean, like, because a lot of people come to me for a lot of different things. And I've learned to say, hey, can we just talk? I need an ear. I need a shoulder. I need a hug. I'm a whole physical touch person. So you see me moving around and stuff while I'm talking. Like, I need a hug. I've had people come just to literally give me specific, like, Nikki Bagby, you out there? Come and give me a straight up, like, mother of the world.
Nikki give the best hugs.
Like, bring you back to life.
Yes.
Bring you back to life. So, so those different things, like just honestly honoring who I am, and knowing that I can, quote unquote, stop the road. Say, I need to lay out from it. I need to go and rest a minute. I need to go speak to a loved one for a minute and not try to help them, save them, do anything for them.
Excellent. Yes, so shout out to all the huggers out here. I got to give a special acknowledgement to Nikki Bagby and Carla Wiley, because they are the two that they got some mama hugs for you. So yes, thank you, ladies. Yeah, I just want to thank you all for what you've been able to share. Honestly, I wanted to answer this question, but I think for me, my self-care is a combination of talking. Like I have an amazing group of friends who are just completely goofy, and they are not interested in half of the stuff that I do to try to save the world. And so I know that I can detach from all the other work and tap into a whole network of friends that just have a totally different perspective on life. And we can just act goofy and enjoy each other's company and be silly and do all of that. And so I know I can turn down all of the, you know, the superhero antics and just trying to be conscious and save everybody else. And sometimes just zone out with them. So I think that's my number one way of really just self-care and healing. So shout out to the Fab Five. They know who they are. Thank you.
Can I get in there?
Ihsan.
Can I
Yeah,
get in
Ihsan, get in there. Yeah.
I mean, I want to join your Fab Five. Can I be number 6?
Oh man, look, we got a whole basketball team. Y'all, you know, come on.
Can I come off the bench?
Starter.
Can I want to acknowledge a couple comments that are in the Facebook comment section before we close out. We have someone by the name of Six Simpson. She said, yes, it's very important that we cannot be so consumed in other things that we forget about ourselves, our loved ones, and other things we have going on. Thank you for that comment. We have someone who acknowledged Mr. Wells is such a great man. Yes, again, keep your prayers up for Michael Wells, Patricia Wells, Faith Charity, Joy and Glory, the whole family, and rest in peace, Hope. We have a comment actually from my cousin, Kia. She mentioned 2 things. She mentioned that her husband, Rod, recommends a book called Good Grief by Granger E. Westberg. And Kia also says, for self-care, I sometimes shut everything down and pray and sit in silence and allow God to speak to me. Other times I connect with family or friends to be encouraged. Thank you for that, Kia. And the last comment I'll share is from Beatrice Deuce. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. It says, grief can build and hit you hard if not addressed immediately. The smallest domino can knock over a larger domino 10 times its size just because of the momentum and the force of the impact as it reaches to the final point. The more you get hit by different types of griefs, the impact grows and can topple you over. Find support to stable you during these times. They are here. And then she said, great messages from all the panelists. And I concur. Y'all have been phenomenal tonight. You've been very transparent. You provided some clarity, some solutions, some dope stuff. And I also am grateful that I got to make it on Eric's basketball team. Thank you, Eric.
All of y'all on. We moving from basketball to football at this point. We got a whole squad. So yes, so thank you. I want to just one word of that comes to mind from this conversation that you want to leave our viewers with. Tyrice, one word that you want to leave our viewers with. Are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. I've been moving.
Oh, I saw. Yeah, I didn't have you on screen. I didn't know you was. We're wrapping up, and I just wanted to get one word from each of you, in terms of what's the top of your mind. One word as we go.
Hope.
Hope. Appropriate. Nicole, one word.
Faith.
Faith. Maxayn.
Love.
Oh, y'all listen. Y'all right out of the scripture. Y'all done messed me up. I can't be goofy with y'all. My one word. Ihsan, what's your one word?
Well, I was gonna say a phrase. It is well. Y'all pretty much were naming like Hope and her family members just now.
Yeah.
But
it is well.
So it is well.
It is well. Wow, that's so. See, y'all so deep. My one word is encouraged, because you have all really encouraged and inspired me, and hopefully the rest of our viewers with this conversation. So thank you. Ihsan, we gonna take us home.
Yeah, thank you all. Like I really do feel pretty pretty refreshed, encouraged by everything that was said tonight. Thank you for identifying some techniques and some ways that we can heal. It's really heavy on me to just continue to ask y'all to pray for the Wells family. I know this is not what y'all expected, but it's what's necessary. I think that they represent a lot of love and hope in this world, and I really want them to be lifted up right now. Thank you for tuning in tonight to our studio audience. We appreciate you. We don't take your time for granted. Thank you for being faithful with your own relationship with God, and thank you for also being dedicated to the mission of growing and healing and being well. Wellness Wednesdays will continue next Wednesday. The format is not going to contain a complete panel. It'll be myself and Eric. We actually are going to be moderated by Tyrice McCoy. She'll be here next week. I'm looking forward to that conversation. It's going to be one of our most transparent conversations, and I appreciate that. Not that any of these other conversations haven't been transparent, but just between Eric and I, we're going to just have a lot of room to just talk, and I encourage everyone to tune in for that. And by then, I should be firmly on your team.
Listen, brother, you are the head coach at this point. But I just want to say, you know, one of the reasons why we decided to have this one-on-one conversation is because, again, the depth of our connection and relationship and the history. I think that, and also acknowledging the need for Black men to really heal and connect and to share with one another. I mean, you know, ladies, I absolutely love all of you. I love the fact that you're here. But, you know, there is something inherent in the DNA of MBKCares that is at the heart speaks to Black men. Everything from Ihsan's brother to Philip Spruwell, who inspired a lot of our connection through his death, all the way through to what's been happening in this city and across the globe. Specifically in relation to George Floyd, the fact that we struggle against the socialization that's imposed upon us as men, to strip away all of that and to be vulnerable and to be able to be willing to heal. And I think that's one of the things that the reason why we see so much gun violence in the streets, the reason why we see so much disenfranchisement, why we see so much pain, is that Black men are not allowed to heal. It's not that Black women are any less allowed, but there is an inherent acceptance in society that you can socialize and you can have your women's circle and you can kind of connect and grieve in a way and build in a way. But to touch on something that Tyrice said earlier about being individual and being isolated, I see so many young men starting at early age, 8, 9, 10 years old, that are being taught to isolate. That when Ihsan reached out to me to be able to begin having these conversations and begin having these Wellness Wednesday episodes, I thought it was imperative, not for just our healing, but for anyone and every Black man that's watching. And so next week's conversation is really just going to take us all the way back to the drawing board and to just start behind all of this, and really allow us to show you where this comes from and why we do what we do. So I look forward to y'all being here. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole, Tyrice, Nicole, and Maxayn, and Eric, I appreciate you. And to everyone out there on Facebook, Zoom, YouTube, thank you as well. We'll see you next Wednesday, August the 12th. We'll be here at 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. for another edition of Wellness Wednesday. Take care. Healing is a process, and continue to grow through your grief. Thank you.